My name is Jim Dolan. I'm the Director of Veteran Outreach for Veterans Path to Hope. For those of you who do not know us, our mission is to provide veterans in need and their families with the services needed to experience hope and achieve success. And the latter part is the key. We just don't want to meet basic needs, although that's what we do. We want veterans and their families to succeed and be able to get on their lives and get on the path to hope. Veterans Path to Hope began as transitional living services in 1996. Alan Belcher, an Army veteran who also became a counselor, recognized that there were a lot of needs that veterans were facing. And in 2001, he developed or purchased what is now called New Horizons. It's a 20-bedroom or 20-room roadside motel in Hebron, Illinois, and that began transitional living services. Veterans Path to Hope is the DBA, but we still operate under the legal name of Transitional Living Services. Alan did a great job of not only beginning the program, but to provide services. And as time went on, those services grew tremendously. We're now under the leadership of Laura Franz, who's been with the organization for the past 11 years. Some of you may have heard her name. She has done a phenomenal job of growing the organization, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we proceed. So a big portion of Veterans Path to Hope's funding and programming is the result of grants that we've received, federal grants that are administered through the Department of Veterans Affairs. These VA programs allow us to be able to operate programs like the Staff Sergeant Fox Suicide Prevention Program, supportive services for veterans and their families, HVRP, which is Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program. And you can see on the map that we operate in all of Lake County, McHenry County, and the border counties with Wisconsin, with the exception of Joe Davies, which is out west. And then 4 counties in Wisconsin. In fact, I just got off a call with the Suicide Prevention Task Force in Milwaukee, the Southeast Wisconsin Suicide Prevention Task Force. And I mentioned that because suicide prevention is what animates us, and I'll delve into that a little bit further. We also have an outpost in Chicago where we provide housing services and employment services. So we have a pretty substantial footprint within Illinois and southern Wisconsin. Each one of these programs tends to be, the federal programs that is, tends to be restricted in terms of our geographic area that we're allowed to cover under that program. And there's various funding requirements, what we can pay for, who we can serve, and where we can serve them. But Veterans Path to Hope as an organization will serve anyone, any veteran, military, active duty guard or reserve, or family member within our catchment area. So the default is that if you have a veteran or family member in need, if you send them to us, we'll be able to wrap our arms around them and get the services to them that they need. As I mentioned earlier, suicide prevention animates everything that we do. We want to make sure that we can get as far upstream of suicide as we possibly can. We want to get to people as the wheels are starting to wobble before they fall off and before they fall into crisis. Because once someone is in crisis, they can be in a deep, dark hole, and it's oftentimes very difficult to reach them. So we try and identify protective factors. Those are connections with family and friends and others to be able to get them out of isolation. We provide peer support, which is what Staff Sergeant Fox Suicide Prevention Program is all about. It is veterans supporting other veterans. those that have been there and know what it's like to transition out of the military, and to be able to offer them assistance to, again, get back on the path to hope. We partner with a number of different partners around the country, but more specifically in Illinois and Wisconsin. And we say that if within our 10 programs that you'll hear about in a bit, if we can't assist with our 10 in-house programs, we're about one or two phone calls away from a partner organization who can serve them. The reason that we focus on veteran suicide intently is that the number is now 22 a day, and some organizations believe that that might be low because there's no universal way to determine across the country how many veterans have actually taken their lives. It's just not a very good system for catching the data. But even at 22 a day, the number is too high. And one of the things that we have focused on is just letting people know, whether they're in the community or they're involved in the veteran and community space, is that all of the work that we're doing doesn't amount to anything. It doesn't matter if somebody checks out, if somebody takes their lives. So we start there to try and get upstream, as I said earlier, to meet the needs of veterans and their families before they fall into crisis. One of the areas that we focus on is housing. Housing is critical for somebody to have the stability that they need. So the transitional living program in Hebron, New Horizons, is designed specifically to take homeless veterans, give them a place to stay, give them a safe place to stay, and a safe place to be able to work with other veterans, and to make sure that they have the stability to be able to look for work or do the things that they need to do to get on with their lives. We help with security deposits for rentals. We do rental and mortgage assistance if somebody has fallen behind. Our team does case management, so they'll hold on to this veteran to make sure that they get what they need. And very seldom does someone come to us with a single need. If they need food to put on their table, oftentimes they need employment or a better paying job in order to be able to afford a home and to be able to take care of their families. So a number of these programs, rental arrears is another one. This is actually one of the largest requests that we get is for housing and housing support. So we're intent on not only providing that support where we can through our grant programs, but also to reach out to other organizations, as I said earlier, to partner with them to meet those needs. So this is a community approach. A lot of times in the nonprofit space, there's some competition for grants and funding. It's not unusual. It exists. But we've taken the attitude that we must collaborate with anyone who's willing to lean in and help veterans and their families. And through that collaboration, we've created a substantial network that allows us to be able to meet the needs of any veteran or family member who might be in our area. Basic needs is another, probably second or third when it comes to the things that people need, especially with the price of groceries today. We have a full pantry in our Crystal Lake location. And I should stop there for a second because we have two main locations. The one is in Crystal Lake on McHenry Avenue. The other is in Grays Lake at a facility called the Landing Zone at 100 South Atkinson. Both of those are drop-in centers. We do have a tiny food pantry in Grays Lake, but our main facility is in Crystal Lake. And any veteran can come in anytime and pick up food that they want. You can see in that picture there, that's a full walk-in freezer. Adjacent to it is a full walk-in cooler. And then the other side is shelving for all of the other things that people might need. We provide hygiene items, even pet supplies, household goods, and furniture as well. So all of the basic needs that folks need. And this goes to the point about housing. Getting somebody a place to live is the first step. Making that place livable is the next step. So We want to make sure that they have all of the housing goods that they need. We also have a team called VCAT, Veteran Community Action Team. This team goes out every day to the Jewels and the other grocery stores in the area to pick up those food supplies. These are items that are either excess items at the grocery store or items that are soon to expire that cannot be sold at the store. Everything is still fresh. Everything is is edible. We have produce. We have meat products in our freezer. Just about everything that you could think of is available through our pantry and through our warehouses. One of the things that this team, the VCAT team, does as well is they'll go out not only to pick up furniture that people want to donate, but they'll also deliver that furniture. So again, going back to setting someone up in a house or apartment, we want to make sure that from day one, it's a livable environment. And the VCAT team does a phenomenal job every day of making sure that we get the products that we need or the furniture and supplies that we need, and then we deliver them. Each Thursday, we have what I call the drive-by. Someone can call, and if they're not able to stay long enough to shop, they can just give us a call. We'll put together a package. This happens every Thursday, where that box of food and daily essentials is loaded up for them. All they have to do is stop in. Their name is on the box. We hand them the box, and they're on their way. So we're trying to get to people at every level based on their busy lives and based on the things that they need. The program I mentioned earlier is HVRP, Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program, works with our SSVF, our Supportive Services for Veterans and their Families Housing Program, to not only provide them housing, but in order to be able to get them employment so that they can afford their rent or eventually move on to home ownership. So our employment team will help with training and education. We assign mentors so that they have an opportunity to learn a trade or learn a skill so that they can succeed in the workplace. And our team at HVRP provides case management all along the way until the veteran is squared away and well on their way to Path to Hope. Our mental health support and recovery support is designed specifically to give veterans the opportunity to share their story and to be able to get a perspective, not only from licensed clinical therapists, but also the peer support that's available through our veterans in our peer support program. Group support is available. Our Thursday night dinners at our Crystal Lake location is actually a form of group support. It's not designed for therapy, but it becomes therapeutic because they're around other veterans. They're able to share war stories or current stories. It really doesn't matter. They're in a group where they're getting the support that they need. And it's one of the keys, and it really has been and always will be, the key to recovery is peer support. Any of the moms on the call know this, that if you have a 2-year-old and you run into another mom that has a 2-year-old, you really don't have to say much. You all know what it's like to have a 2-year-old. So the same is true in just about every walk of life, but especially in the military community. That camaraderie, that group support, that peer support is essential to understand, number one, that you're not alone, and number two, that there is a support structure in the community to be able to provide you with the help that you need. The other thing that I wanted to mention about employment, and I'm going back just a little bit, is to make sure that not only do they get a job, because most veterans have had quite a bit of responsibility in the military, either managing multi-million-dollar budgets or overseeing a number of other veterans. So they have skills coming out of the military. And oftentimes the jobs that they're offered, in a word, they do not want to just be flipping burgers. They want to make sure that they have an opportunity to grow and to succeed. And this is where thriving beyond the tribe comes in. What we have recognized is that a lot of veterans, especially the Vietnam veterans, did not get a very warm welcome when they came back. And so they would hunker down with other veterans almost exclusively. Well, if that's what you're doing, then chances are your wife was not a veteran, your kids certainly weren't veterans, and most often your boss is not going to be a veteran. So we want the veterans to expand their vision of what community actually means. We want them to be able to integrate back into civilian life. And the only practical way to do that is to be able to connect with other veterans and to connect to the civilian population. And it's one of the things that we have been trying to do. Connecting with other veterans is critical, but if you do that exclusively, you limit the possibility for you to succeed. And when it comes to employment, there are a lot of companies who are out there waving the flags, saying that they hire veterans. Some are really doing it in earnest. So recruitment and hiring is important for veterans, but retention is the name of the game. So one of the things that Veterans Path to Hope offers is an ability to go outside of the supervisory structure, or in the military, they call it a command structure. If you have a need and you're a new employee, very rarely are you going to go to your supervisor and tell them that you're having trouble putting food on the table, you're having trouble with your relationship with your spouse. Veterans Path to Hope offers the opportunity for them to have those conversations, to deal with those matters outside of the workplace so that they can begin to succeed. A lot of times people who join an organization want to be seen as a superstar, so they'll not mention anything. By having a community organization like Veterans Path to Hope, they have the opportunity to address those needs and to get them met. So at the end of the day, everything we do is built around building connections. So the group dinners, our coffee groups, and our outdoor programs are designed to allow veterans to get together, and they can bring their spouses as well. And we want to make sure that the community is not only reaching out to them, but they're reaching out to the community to build these connections. There are a number of organizations who provide services, but the number one thing that people want across the board, all of us, including those on the call here, need strong, healthy connections with the community. And these group dinners, the coffee groups, everything we do is built around developing the relationships that are necessary to be able to build community and to reintegrate in a healthy way after service. So I mentioned a little bit about our mental health and peer support. So the screen skipped ahead, and I'll go back to that if I can. So with the mental health and recovery support, one of the things that we are doing and that we're asking other service organizations to do as well. I mentioned the rate of suicide. One of the main risk factors is traumatic brain injury. And I was on a webinar recently, and I had never heard this number before. And it wasn't veteran centric. They were talking about homelessness, and they said that 53.1% of the homeless have had a traumatic brain injury. And it totally changed my viewpoint. It blew away all of my bias, because when it came to homelessness, I always thought, well, you are in this situation because of something you did or something you neglected to do. And I even asked them to cite the reference for that percentage. It's 53.1% of the homeless. And that's in the general population. So if it's 53.1% in the general population, because of the nature of the work in the military, it's likely to be much higher than that. So in everything we do, we try and get to the root cause of it. So if you're in an organization that is providing services for people that are struggling, we recommend a couple of things. One is to ask the question, have you ever suffered a traumatic brain injury? And most people may not even know. But if they've had a sports injury, if they have been in a car accident, it could be any number of things that have caused an injury to the brain, and that's more prevalent than people realize. And that 53.1% of the homeless population just opened my eyes as to how prevalent it is. In fact, the stats are that every 21 seconds, somebody in the United States suffers a traumatic brain injury. Worldwide, it's every 18 seconds. So it's much more prevalent than we have known, and it's much more prevalent when it comes to the root cause of the behavior that we oftentimes look at. It's typically a symptom of the injury that they suffered, whether in combat or simply going through life. So I encourage those who are caring for others to look for ways at intake or throughout your relationship with that person to ask the question to see if that's something that may have precipitated their situation and made them less able to function. And we can come up with, we have, and there is a lot of research and a lot of effort being put forth to try and mitigate the circumstances and the injury. I'll skip forward through these. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about VPH's events. These are, the most recent one was our Spirit Poll. Our sixth annual Spirit Poll that we held on March 7th. We have a number of others. We do a number of Jeep runs. We do a Patriot run. We do a motorcycle run. There's a lot of activities that we're doing, and some are pure fundraisers, but most are friend raisers. We want to be engaged with the community. We want the community to engage with us, and we want them to be aware of what's happening in the veteran community. For a while, there was, right after 9/11, there was a lot of camaraderie. There was a lot of unity in America because we had been attacked. And for almost 20 years, people were supporting the military and veteran community. They may not have supported the particular war or conflict that we were involved in, but they were very supportive of the veteran community, unlike after Vietnam, where they were ostracized and spat upon and called baby killers. The community at large was very supportive of the military and of veterans. And that waned a little bit as we went almost 22 years in Afghanistan. But I've said for years that you never know when we may end up deploying 250 or 400,000 troops. And with all that's going on in the Middle East today, we're on the verge of perhaps doing that. Veterans Path to Hope wants to be part of a network, a community-wide network, to provide the support and the net to be able to serve veterans after they've served. So even though we had a little bit of a respite, we never know when we're going to have, as I said, 250 to 400 veterans or military deployed. They're going to need care and feeding when they come back, and that's what Veterans Path to Hope is all about. So there's a couple of ways, and I mentioned them, making sure that you're aware that traumatic brain injury might be the cause or the root cause of whatever the behavior is that the person is dealing with. The other is to make sure that you, at intake, ask the question. So if you're serving the community and you're doing an intake or an assessment, we advise any organization, regardless of what they're doing, to ask the right question. Oftentimes they'll ask, "Are you a veteran?" And a spouse will say no, or a loved one will say no. So the best way to ask the question is to say, "Have you or a loved one ever served in the armed forces?" That casts a much wider net. It allows you to be able to make referrals to organizations like ours. We can connect them to the VA for all the benefits that they're entitled to. And it really focuses the community's attention on what Lincoln's admonition was all about in his second inaugural. He said, "We are to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan." When he said those words, Lincoln was not thinking about federal bureaucracy. He wasn't thinking about the VA. In fact, that didn't become the motto of the VA until 1959. He was talking to every person in every community that we are to bind up the nation's wounds, and we are to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we're taking care of those who have served us and afforded us the freedoms and the liberty and the luxuries that we have as a community. So for any organization that I talk to, I always mention Lincoln's admonition because he wasn't talking to the military and he wasn't talking about a bureaucracy or the VA. He was talking to every one of us. And I think he's talking to us through history that we are to bind up the nation's wounds. So I'll be happy to take any questions. Jessica, I don't know if there's any in the chat. If I rush through this, I'm happy to go back over it, but I really want this organization and any organization that you represent to know that they can connect with us, to make sure that if there's a veteran or a family member in the community that's in need of help, that they know exactly who they can send them to. We'll wrap our arms around them, make sure that they get what they need. All of our contact information is here on the screen. Jessica has a copy of this presentation. You can reach out to us either by phone, email, or on our website. My contact information is just below that. And I'm a serial texter, and my phone is always on. So if there's ever a need, don't hesitate to reach out.